In this episode, I'm back in Denmark for part 2 of my conversation with Harald Krabbe. This time we take the journey with the sour cherries from the tree to the glass. Harald walks us through how his juice becomes Rancio, Cherries, Solera, or even Vermouth. He also shows us how Frederiksdal is taking control of their own story and navigating the virtual world in the COVID era. Welcome to No Pants During the Pandemic. Hi, I'm Kevin Brooks, and this is No Pants During the Pandemic. Welcome back to the second part of my conversation with Harald Krabbe from Frederiksdal Kirsebærvin. Harald, why don't we pick up where we left off?
Perfect, yeah.
Cool. Alrighty, let's get going. Can you take me through the process of making one of the cherry wines?
Yes.
Let's start out in the field once the cherries are ready to be harvested.
So the way we harvest the cherries is that we have a cherry picker in the field. Yeah, it's like an olive picker, just checking the trees. As earlier said, we're really careful to make good cherries in the field. The good juice comes from a well looked after tree. That's very important to us.
Now you use basically the olive picker, for lack of a better term. You use that just so there's less stress on the actual cherries? Or is it just, it works really well to get them out of the tree really fast?
This is very, very different from year to year. This year, it was really hard to shake them off the tree because we had a drought 2 months before harvest, and it just didn't seem that the trees would let go of the berries. They were very mature, but they matured from the berry into the tree. Usually it's the tree saying, okay, now you've matured, I will let go of you. This year we had berries very ripe, but they were just, they was just sticking onto the branches, and they were quite hard to get off. This is different every year. Sometimes we harvest peacefully, where we allow ourselves just to wait. What we're interested in is in a berry which has been sitting on the tree for a long time, where we want the water to evaporate out of the cherries, so we just get as much dry matter as possible. What can spoil this is a lot of rain or a lot of wind, where they will just blow off. We live with a weather forecast for a month. We decide if we're going to have a lot of rain, okay, then we would have to harvest quicker and faster. Whereas if it's very stable and lots of sun and no wind, we will say, okay, let's wait another week and we will have a better quality of juice. This is also always a big gamble. We are now here in the winery, and we bring it in here with our truck. The forklift will just tip the boxes into this over-dimensioned peristaltic pump. When I say oversized, it's because we really want to be gentle when we deal with the berries in order not to hurt them too much. And we just pump them onto these fermenter tanks. We have 3 tanks. They contain about 1 day's harvest, which is about 20 tons. We fill the tank every day, and they will stay for 3 days fermenting. So it's spontaneously fermented, and this is also quite important. The pits are in the tank with the juice for these 3 days. It has a very, very distinct hormone character, the pits, and this will influence the wine. So we don't want too much of it. Whatever we do to our cherries, it will have a consequence in the taste. So this is actually a machine you use in Bordeaux for Merlot and Cabernet fermentation. And this tank is doing the pump over, what's called the remontage in French. where we will circulate the wine inside the tank with this little small blue pump. You can also see the tank has cooling caps, and the fermentation temperature is quite important for us. We find that we enhance the darker notes by going up to almost killing the yeast, about 30 degrees Celsius. And then we'll let out all the mash into the press behind me here. And this is actually a fruit press. It's not a wine press. It's called a belt press. You can see that on the top, the mash is pumped onto and laid on top of that red tape. And then the juice gets pressed in all these rolls.
Why use the belt press instead of a wine press?
We feed the press continuously with small amounts of pulp all the time. The reason why we want this type of press instead of a wine press is you have a whole lot of berries you put in a drum, and then you press this amount of wine. But we don't seem to be able to get enough juice off the cherries. The yield we get by using this press is 60 to 70%. And we're trying not to press too hard, meaning we press about 0.6 bars, because if you press any harder, you will get a lot of flavors from the berries which we don't want. And this is also why our wine is fairly expensive, because in a very efficient press, you can get 98% out of a pomace. And then it gets pumped into all these steel tanks over here. And all the wines will be kept on a steel tank for a year. After 3 days, it will have about 5-6 degrees alcohol. And it will run up to 10-11 on these tanks. And then it will be finished. After 1 year, half of our production is put into vintage bottles and then sold. The vintage is fruity, very young. It's not influenced by any media it's been in, because the steel tank is just, preserving the fruit quite well.
Like a grape wine, your vintages, your different years will vary depending on how the weather is, how the crop is, and all those types of things, right?
Yes. We bottle the year.
All right. What can really affect the cherries?
A crucial time of year is flowering. When the flower is open, it's very vulnerable. And if it's too cold, it will just kill the flowers inside, and the pollination can't take place. And then we don't have any fruit. This is why it's so important to be on the right geographical location, because some places, they always get frost in spring, whereas we here are safe from that by having water around us.
So vintage is half the wine each year. Where does the other half go?
The other half of the wine will go either in barrels, or it will go to the rancho field, which is just in front of me. I will just make a 180 degrees turn. And you can see outside here, there are about 2,500 balloons. And the wine will stay there for 2 years. The wine will be exposed to the sun. It will be exposed to, as of tonight, the frost. So it's quite cold. It's freezing now. And you saw all those metal caps. They are just there in order not to have dirt inside. It's not hermetically closed, so the wine can breathe. This is something quite known in the wine world. So when you have a sherry or a Madeira, the wine is exposed to air. And this is where you get an oxidized style of wine. And after 2 years outside, we put it on these big vats over here. Those are old cognac vats.
And what does the rancio taste like?
Because it's oxidized and it's been put to the exposure of sun and air, you go from primary cherry, you break the notes, and it will be like coffee notes, figs, prunes, plums, a little bit of medicinal notes as well. So it's a completely different style of wine. I really like it. In my opinion, it becomes lighter too. The other wines, they are almost pitch dark in your glass, whereas this one becomes more brown, and you can actually see through. The visibility gets better in the glass.
The residual sweetness is probably gone from it a little bit more too, from the oxidation?
Yeah. We do have also wine just being made on barrels. This is the reserve. Usually the reserve is barrel aged for 2-3 years. Typically for the reserve, we're using fairly new barrels, just having been used 2 years, meaning the oak will still have an influence on the flavor of the wine. We do find it quite good with these notes of primarily Syrah, Mourvèdre, Grenache, Cabernet and Merlot. So it's southern French barrels. I have my favorite barrel producer. You can taste even the difference between the sizes of the barrels. So we have here the 350 liter, we have 225s here. There is a white barrel over here. That's Mikkeler. He has a barrel he bought sometime, so we keep some wine for him on his barrel.
And I assume other brewers are asking for your used barrels?
We have actually quite a lot of brewers now asking for barrels all over the world. So it's been a fun part to connect with the beer world, with connection with the barrels.
That's cool. You also produce your Cherries.
Cherries is a mix between barrel-aged wine and tank-fermented wine. 80% barrel-aged and a little bit of young, fresh wine on top. But it's also been sitting on lees, so this gives a more fatter character to the wine.
And just for the people who may not know out there, the lees is basically the spent yeast and the bits of the cherries that are left.
Yeah, obviously in the press we separate skin and stone from the juice, but even in the juice there will be a lot of sediments. This actually varies from year to year. Some year we have high dry matter, other years we don't have any. In the sediments there are a lot of old dyed yeast, which is flavoring the wine quite a lot.
And then you've got your demi-sec, your sparkling wine.
That's a very young wine, and it's actually being made like a champagne, but not in a bottle, but on a big tank. We pick the cherries, we ferment it, then we pick some juice from some locally produced pears. They're called Lucas, and we blend that in, adding sugar. That will restart the fermentation in the cherry wine, and we drive it to Germany, just a few hours from here. There is a Sektkellerei, which is equivalent of a champagne producer, and he will finish the wines on the pressure tanks and also put it in bottle. Then it's ready for sale after 1 year.
The one variety of your wines that we didn't mention is the Solera.
We have our Solera wine, which is the most famous one. And the reason why it's famous is, I think, because of the taste, first of all, but also because it takes a long time to make. So what happens in a Solera bottle, it's actually a system or a way of making wine which is known in old. You have Sherry uses Solera system, also when you do Balsamico. But the idea is that you pour in new wine in this every year, and this is the best wine you have. But in order to have space, we need to bottle something. And we bottle from this one, this smaller bottle, this barrel over here. So once half of this is bottled, it's about 400 bottles a year. Then we need to refill it. We refill from this barrel. What's missing in this barrel, because it's gone into that, we take from this one and so on into this. We call this the mother barrel. So the best wine we keep pouring in here, and during time the wine runs up and ends up in this barrel. And it will take an average about 11 years to get through all these liters.
What's the finished Solera taste like?
This is just like Balsamico. This is good stuff. Very intense, very deep. The ABV is about 15, 16. You can see just the color, and you get this very deep, intense flavors of plums. You should try this.
You guys also started making the one thing you didn't want to be compared to, a cherry liqueur.
And it's a really good liqueur in the sense that, as I'm saying, good wine is made in the field. We have some really good cherries. We take care of them. They are well balanced when they get in, and this is what you can taste. Because drinking the liqueur is the same as eating a well-preserved cherry, putting it in your mouth. We ferment them a little bit, like 2-3%, and then we add in some very, very good spirit we get from Spain. and then we just leave it on these big vats. And now it's been there for 2 years. We do find that the maturation on these big cognac vats is good for the cherry.
And you guys also had been experimenting making vermouth too, right?
Oh yeah. It's here. Just a second. Yes, you're right, Kevin. Yeah, here it is. And we just bottle it, so now it's ready to go again. And this is just for fun. It's just a vermouth of our taste. You can do vermouth of anything you like. It just has to have woodworm. What do you say? Woodworm, wormwood?
Wormwood.
So the base of it is our vintage wine. We're trying to balance it with grinded coffee, cinnamon, the peel from both orange and lemon, a little bit of vanilla too. We will try and do some more of this. I think it's quite good fun and definitely something more interesting than an Aperol Spritzer, in my opinion. In a big glass with lots of ice, a slice of orange, and if you can find a really dry tonic, then it's great.
Excellent. Are there any other things you're working on?
I would like to do more lighter style wines. We do have a couple of trials here. This summer we came out with a 9% alcohol, and that's like a natural wine. Our organic field, we press it for 3 days and we put it in a bottle and that's it. That's a very natural wine thing. It would be like a Shiraz, I'd guess, a little bit more fruity.
I look forward to trying that one. Annually, how much wine and spirits does Frederiksdal produce?
Right now we sell around 100,000 bottles a year. We can do a lot more. We make a lot of juice as well. A lot of beer producers now are asking us for juice. So we do take orders of juice in advance of every harvest. Now just 3 for 10, just making this. I think it's good fun.
Well, actually, why don't you explain that? Because I think, at least for the beer folks, this is a big thing.
In the beginning, I had no idea of this whole beer scene. And Mikela, it's 10 years ago, he comes up and he said, hey, can we buy some cherries? And we said, sure. From that day on, when he made his sponge and cherry, Frederiksdal sort of got this. That's why we're in the beer scene, because the beer people, they have really embraced us and they really love our stuff. As this beer scene just opens up, you've been part of it. It's everywhere now, and especially in the US. And I think people having tasted the cherries from us and this is what I really like, is that people appreciate good farming. Because if you do good farming, you do good products and you can just taste it. Now it's getting out and about and it's a very good story. And now we have brewers coming from Norway, Sweden, Germany. We have distillers coming now and picking up cherries in their trucks. So it's getting about that we do make some, proper good cherries.
Rightfully so.
So a couple of years ago, 3 for 10, they asked us to deliver some of our berries to them in Belgium.
So there'll be a Driefontein Creek made with your cherries.
Yes, it will be launched in April.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Let's kind of turn the page here and head into current events. How have you and Frederiksdal been doing over the past, 11 months with the pandemic?
Good question. So on one of my trips, I had some days in New York and I had an afternoon. I had to kill some time and I was walking about. There was a store and a very beautiful woman came out and she was originally, I think she was a refugee from Ethiopia, but she'd been in Sweden and now she was in New York and she was selling these Swedish raincoats. And she actually talked me into buying one of these horrendously expensive raincoats. But she invited me the following night to have dinner with her and her husband. We had a really good talk. And this guy, he was in the medical branch doing these he was just using the internet at its maximum. And I got very fascinated of web sales and how you do videos and how you promote everything and how it got linked into one another in order to boost your business. And since then, I've been looking into having a more digital strategy for Frederiksdal, because what's difficult for us is other people having to deal with our story. So what we're trying to create and what we've been working at is actually what we're doing right now. Me standing here explaining the whole thing. When you're here, you can feel it. So we're trying to create a feeling of the consumer being as close to us as possible in the winery, not being filtered by dealers and importers and all these things. It was really luck because when the pandemic struck, we were all set to go and we took off, and this has saved us.
Now, so can somebody I guess, throughout the EU, somebody can just buy a bottle of the Cherries or a couple of bottles of the Cherries and get it shipped to their house?
Yeah, they can get it online now.
So yeah, same as that's. I mean, that's been how in Europe most of the brewers have been staying afloat, and here in the United States, where the laws all allow, or I guess the distances the laws all allow.
Our turnover has been as it's always it's the same as for the last couple of years. So I think this year we're coming out sort of with the skin on our nose still, and we can see that this digital strategy is something we want to do more of, and it's working really well.
Great. And now, how many people do you have working at the winery at this point?
Well, we have 3-4 people being here every day. I have a sales person in Asia. I have actually a Danish salesperson in Australia, but she is an Amedi. She's selling wine from Australia to the US, so she knows the US market really well.
So you didn't have to furlough anybody because you're a pretty small group. I mean, obviously your salespeople in other countries probably aren't selling a lot right now, but your production end people, you didn't have to furlough anybody or anything like that?
Yes. So what's happening right now in our company is that every week everyone is obliged to go and test themselves. We also have this app where you can look if you are endangered by somebody who's been near you. The app will tell you that you are endangered. So that way we keep track of it. So far we've been free of any incidents of this silly corona. We are far away from Copenhagen and many people as well. Where it's difficult, I think, is in bigger cities where people are closer than we are. Even this Christmas, I didn't see my parents. We kept in small groups. I have a big family, but we were just keeping in small because my parents are quite old. So not to put them into risk, everybody stayed just with their families at home, which has been also a marvelous experience in the sense that I think the pandemic has taught me. I was traveling a lot before, and now I'm getting more close to my family, more close to my company, and I'm breathing a bit, deeper. And I think I will take notice of that and say, okay, it's not about running everywhere and meeting everyone. Even what we're doing now is, I think, fantastic and also better for the world. I mean, we're not flying everywhere. To me, it's okay. Obviously, it's been really hard for some people, but it does make you think twice, and I think that's a fine thing.
Yeah, I've definitely been finding those type of benefits from this. And how have things been in general in Denmark with this?
From your situation, I think it's probably what I would describe as exact opposite of what's been going on in the US. I think from day one, economy has not been mentioned at all, in the sense that it's been taking care of people no matter what costs. And it's been, if you calculate how much money it's been to the people who have been passed away, it's a lot of money being, it's been very expensive to have this pandemic in Denmark. The Danish debt is huge now. But at the same time, everyone feels secure. People feel safe. I think people, they take care of each other. I spoke to my wife about this a couple of days ago, and we said, okay, it's like having the country is just being one big company where the company is really taking good care of their people and not letting go of anyone. This is actually a really good feeling. But it's, of course, a question of economy as well. There will be a bill to be paid afterwards. And this is the question, how and who, because someone has to work harder. meaning in Denmark, it will just be more tax.
But the flip side to that is, well, at least there'll be people around to pay the bill.
Yeah. These days, there are a little bit of frustration in the two bigger cities. There are demonstrations against being locked up so much, but I think most people disagree with that and don't. It's more a little bit rebellious people doing that. We feel good, and actually the numbers right now are quite good. And we have closed schools until 7th of February. 1st of March, I think the country will open up slowly again. And also the vaccination is picking up speed. I think the aim is to have the vaccine will be done by end of July, and the whole country will be done.
Fantastic. So what's the next step for Frederiksdal?
We're going to be more organic. We're looking into biodynamic cherry growing, and I can just go in my orchard and I can see the bees. There are a lot more insects. There are bigger animals like deers, and we have hawks coming now because there are mice. And I'd love to turn the other 90% into that kind of farm too, but I just need the economical model of the cherry orchard to be economically sustainable at the same time, and it takes a long time. We have to work on that first before we start implementing this idea into the rest of the farm.
And at the winery?
So growing and looking after the fields is not so much what I personally spend my time doing, because that's been put into system. Today it's marketing and sales. It's a steep learning curve in the sense that I've never done this before. I have to learn all these things, and especially now being much more having a digital strategy, there are even more new things to take into consideration. And I must also admit that having to acknowledge that people sometimes appreciate more how things are presented rather than what's inside the bottle is something I have to understand or just accept. We can see that selling the wine for occasions is a very important thing for us, especially for Christmas, Valentine's Day, for Easter. I think this is where we will be able to sell our wines, because it's a fairly expensive bottle, but it's a nice gift. But that means it's important that it looks good, firstly in the bottle, but then sometimes also in a box with sometimes other things. Now we are collaborating with a really good chocolatier here in Denmark, who has the same idea of where the chocolates are being picked and how they're fermented and how the taste is enhanced. So we actually dry some of our cherries and put them inside the chocolate. So he has now picked the right variety of chocolate which fits our cherries really well, and we make this filled chocolates. In the beginning, I thought I was just gonna make wine and just having a lorry coming here and picking up the whole thing, but that's not happening. So we have to do the sales ourselves. It's interesting, but it's also hard work. It's fun, and I get to deal with people, and I really like that. It's good fun. Actually, that dialogue is interesting because I produce something and I have to stand up for it, and the consumer is, merciless. If they don't like it, they will tell me. So, I like that. I like being honest about what I do, and I do my best, and usually it works.
Great. Well, that about wraps things up. Harald, thanks for spending all this time with me and explaining what you do at Frederiksdal. Best of luck with everything and getting through this craziness, and I'll speak with you soon.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and look forward to speak to you again.
And I look forward to getting more of your cherry wine in the United States.
You will. You can be sure of that.
Can't wait. For more information on Frederiksdal, or to order some of their wine, you can check out their website. The link is in the video's description. And if you liked this episode, or any of the others I've done, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.